Hey everyone, Regal Reviews here. It is TV Show Thursday. So today I decided to review The Tudors. The Tudors was a TV show on the network Showtime, and it's quite fascinating. There's a lot of things that go on in The Tudors. There's lots of characters, so I'll just focus mainly on Henry and his relationship with his wives. So Henry in the first season is married to Catherine of Aragon, and he's quite frustrated with her because she's failed to give him a male heir, which was like a big thing back in England because that's the heir to the throne. She's given him Mary, who's a girl, and I think she had 6 children total, but they unfortunately ended up dying. And he's you see in the first season he's trying to marry Mary off to someone better. He also has a mistress, Bessie Blount, who actually does give Henry an illegitimate son. And the thing about that is that he recognizes him as his son. And this isn't historically accurate, but it shows in the show that Henry Fitzroy, who's his illegitimate son, dies at childhood age, when in fact in history it shows that he dies at 17 or 18, and that leaves Henry completely heartbroken because he finally got a son and he's gone now. And then he sets his eyes on Anne Boleyn, who becomes his second wife, and he tries to figure out a way how to divorce Catherine, but he can't do that because the church says he can't. So he decides to come up with his own church, and he divorces Catherine and dubs Mary a bastard then. And Anne gets married and she's crowned the Queen of England, and she ends up pregnant, and they all think it's a boy. They went to astrologers and they all said it was a boy. Well, it turns out that she gave birth to a girl named Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is treated like a princess. She has servants and everything, and Anne is pregnant shortly after, but she loses the baby. So that gets Henry a little bit frustrated, so he sets his eyes on Jane Seymour, who becomes his third wife then. And I believe when Catherine died, they had this celebration. They all wore yellow, which I guess is a color celebration. And Anne reveals that she's pregnant for her third child, and she catches Henry with Jane, and she ends up losing the baby over the stress over it. And Henry's devastated, and at that moment he accuses Anne of treason and witchcraft, and he arranges for her execution. And that's when Anne Boleyn's beheaded, and Elizabeth then loses her title, and he marries Jane Seymour right after the execution. And Henry dotes on Jane and gives her many gifts, and he's even said, I think it's even been, I've read that was his favorite wife, and I think it is his favorite wife because she's the only one to give him a boy, Prince Edward. And it was bittersweet because Henry finally got his son, but Jane died of childbed fever because I guess the conditions in 1500s weren't sanitary, so he died then. I mean, she died then, and he was grieving for a while, and he ended up marrying Anne of Cleves, who he didn't find attractive, but she was very loyal to him. And meanwhile, you see Princess Mary. Well, actually, before I move on with Anne of Cleves, the interesting thing about Jane Seymour is that she brought Mary and Elizabeth back to court and tried to reconcile them with the father. And you saw Mary during his time with Anne of Cleves trying to figure out how she can get ahead in the royal line now with Prince Edward in the picture. And you see that Elizabeth is very smart and very clever girl. She's very smart. And Henry doesn't stay married to Anne of Cleves long. he then marries Catherine Howard, who was a cousin of Anne Boleyn, and she's very much younger, and Mary does not like her at all, and Catherine Howard knows it, and she even points out that she hasn't given him a male heir yet, and at one point Catherine thought she was pregnant, but it turns out she wasn't, which frustrated Henry. But the interesting thing about Catherine Howard is that she was having an affair with Culpeper. I don't remember his first name, but she was having an affair, and she was caught, and she ended up being beheaded, much like her cousin Anne Boleyn. So then he marries his last wife, Catherine Parr, and she's a very loyal wife, and she's a great mother figure to his children. She's very close to Elizabeth and Edward. Edward, around this time, becomes ill, so they're all wondering, like, they're all trying to help him because that's his heir, and he eventually moves into his own house, Prince Edward, instead of having his governess. And you see Henry obviously is not doing well. He looks like he's has a lot of health problems. And what was interesting in the last episode, you saw the ghosts of his 3 wives, Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, and Jane Seymour visited him, and Catherine of Aragon was frustrated with him for obvious reasons. And he mentions that Mary should have been married by now. And Anne Boleyn tells him that she was innocent of all accusations of her, and she regrets how she neglected Elizabeth because she was so preoccupied to give Henry a son. But she also mentions how proud she is of Elizabeth, and he mentions that too. And Jane visits him, and he's happy to see her again. But she's upset because of how he's treating Prince Edward, and he says, no, he's my most beloved son. And she's mentioned how Henry, I wouldn't say drives him away, but kind of doesn't see him a lot, and that upsets her. And she also mentions that Edward dies young, which upsets Henry, and he does end up dying young at like 15, I think over tuberculosis. And Henry then dies, and what was fascinating about the whole series is Henry's obsession to have a son, when it was in fact Elizabeth who then ended up being queen for 40 odd years. So the Tudors, although it only had 4 seasons, it was a very good show. It gave you a lot of information about Henry VIII and his wives, and also the people at court and some of his mistresses. If you're interested in Henry VIII history, I would definitely recommend this show. If you want to watch the Tudors, I believe it is on demand under Showtime TV shows. So I hope you guys enjoyed this TV show review of the Tudors. Like, subscribe, and remember, stay regal.